Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Elevating the Customer Experience for Business Results, presented by BlueSnap. Before we get started today, just a couple of logistics. First, we will be recording today's webinar and we'll send you a link post-event. Also, if at any time you have questions for me, Brian, or David, please submit your questions in the question box to the right of your screen. We will do our best to get to everyone's questions, but if we are unable to do so today, we will be sure to follow up with you post-event. Also, we want to hear from you, so we are going to be running a poll at the end of our webinar about how you feel or how you want to be elevating the customer experience with payments in 2022. So definitely be ready to participate. So without further ado, let's do our panelists' introductions. So first off, I'm April Grudier, VP of Marketing here at BlueSnap, and I'm really excited to have my colleagues from Ireland with me today. Brian Gaynor, Director of Product for BlueSnap, and David Keane, Account Manager for BlueSnap. How are both of you doing today?
Really good, April, thanks.
I'm doing okay. I have one arm in this thing, so I'll only be talking at half volume with my hands, unlike I normally do. So
yes, you have a
broken waving
wing.
Around.
Yes, you have a broken wing, and we're so happy that you were still able to participate with us today. So thank you so much. I'm really excited to have you both here today because one, my background in retail, I just have this affinity for customer experience and what it can do for a business or a brand. So I'm really excited today to talk about these trends. And so we've been looking at 2022 and some of the biggest trends driving payments. And we really found that there's some exciting things rising to the surface. So before we jump in, I just wanted to start with a little bit of background. So if you think about, because of the pandemic, we've experienced so much change over the last couple of years, and businesses we're on this accelerated journey to digitalization out of a combination of both necessity and buyer demand. And so it's really clear that buying habits have changed, and now both B2B and B2C customers have these new expectations about how they're purchasing goods and services. And really gone are the days that only marketing, so myself and my team, were worried about customer experience. And it has become something that everyone within the organization is really keenly focused on. So you have payment and finance professionals seeing that putting the customer first throughout the payment process can really have a positive impact on the bottom line. And so what can a business do to elevate that customer experience? So in our research, talking to industry insiders, we've identified 4 key trends for 2022 that, if adopted, can help companies reap the rewards of offering an elevated customer experience. So those trends, which we identified, were: the first one was businesses will meet customer demands for local experiences. The second, more alternative payment methods will become normalized. The third, businesses and consumers will move towards a cashless society. And fourth, last but not least, digitalizing B2B payments will continue to progress. So with Brian and David's help today, we're going to dig a bit more into each of these trends, and let's get started. So our first trend: businesses will meet the customer demands for local experience. David, how does providing a local payment experience impact customers and subsequently businesses?
Thanks, April. Yeah, with growing global audiences, businesses, they need to be able to customize the payment experience for customers based on, where they are located. Just like a US customer, wouldn't assume that every customer in Mexico or Japan can read product descriptions in English. Businesses shouldn't really assume that global customers will understand the checkout process in another currency. With that in mind, there are several things you need to consider. You need to ensure your checkout is translated to the correct language, first of all. Research suggests that about 20% of shoppers abandon a checkout if it isn't. You should always show prices in local currency where possible. This will help customers obviously understand what they are paying more clearly. Third, you should consider the popular payment types based on location. Not every region favors card usage. Again, some of the surveys we kind of leaned on suggested that 56% of businesses thought they were losing revenue as they didn't have the required payment methods in place. Good example there could be, a Dutch customer not completing a purchase as ideal wasn't available, or in Germany, if so forth wasn't there, they might abandon the checkout. Lastly, and pretty important one is you do need to meet the compliance requirements for each country of origin and keep your customers' information secure. Which is challenging. Following these steps will give your customers the confidence and ability to move forward with their purchase. However, Brian, perhaps you could give us more information on how customers could implement these different things.
Yeah, David, I think you hit on some of the key points in terms of what people need to consider. When looking at this, I always think, where are you experiencing growth, or where are you targeting growth? So, as a business, you're going to look and sort of say, yeah, I'm going to expand into that vertical, or I'm going to expand into those countries. And you do your due diligence, as you said, about, what needs to be done as regards local currencies, what needs to be done as regards compliance, data protection, and stuff like that. And you can have a very planned entry into that market. But something that we see, and people maybe don't consider, is accidental market entry. And what I mean by that is that when you've got a good product and a good site out there, people will find it from other regions and other territories you hadn't considered before. So what we find, and what successful merchants do, is they analyze, where are my customers coming from? So we have reports, for example, that we can provide you to show what the country of origin of those shoppers are, and then maybe to consider, actually, have I accidentally gone into a different country that I wasn't tailoring myself to? And again, you can go into the local language, the local currencies, etc. The prime example that we've had, myself and David, being based here in Ireland, we would have, in the past, before Brexit, shopped an awful lot on UK websites. But now, because of Brexit and the VAT changes, I know my personal habits have changed, and now looking to European websites where I wouldn't have before because of the language barrier. And we're seeing more and more of those that are now presenting in English in order to access Irish customers. So use that as a method. Don't just think about the planned market entries that you've gone for. Look at the data that you have and look at those as well. The other thing I would always suggest as well is that whenever you're trying something new, you're trying a new vertical, trying a new market, is to test it and do A/B testing in your checkout flow. So what I mean by that is that you can always tweak as regards how your site looks. You can try those new currencies, you can try the wording on it, but always test to see what impact it has on your actual cart completion rate. How many shoppers actually get through, and by making a particular tweak, by offering that currency, by offering that payment method, what impact does it have? So an anecdote I always remember of a previous company I worked with, the guys in design were changing, they changed the background color of the checkout page, and found there was a statistical difference in checkout on having a blue background on a yellow background. They were the two corporate colors in that business. And it was kind of, why? I don't know. And why the guys even think of it, but they did. And it worked, and there was a 1.5% uplift in completions based on having a blue background. Don't know why, but it just shows you, if you go and test these things and see if it works.
Yeah, if it works, make the change.
Brian, and if it doesn't, back it out.
Yeah, obviously don't. Brian, for example, if you were a German, customer who was looking to expand into new countries, what advice would you offer them? What would you suggest?
Well, look, I think, as we mentioned earlier, it's all about local. Think about the local language, local currency, local payment method. So you have to consider those three things. Other things that may not be as obvious is that if you're going into a new market, for example, if you're dealing with physical goods, you probably have a logistics company you're using within your own territory today, but maybe they're not as successful in your target country. So think about, who are the shipper that you're going to use to actually freight the delivery to your customer, and you might be better off using for shipments into that new country that you're going into, is to maybe use whoever the predominant player who has the most trucks on the street in that particular country. The other thing is, as well, is that we find is that sometimes merchants can be afraid of currencies. That because, well, we're dealing with euros, I'm going to have everything on my website in euros. But with a company like BlueSnap, we can allow you to present over 100 currencies to your consumers. So, if somebody's shopping in Thailand, you can present that to them as in their pricing. In Vietnam, you can have the dong. All those prices are available, but you as a merchant don't have to deal with them. We'll take that complexity out and we'll give you the currency at the end of the day. So it's a win-win. Your shopper sees the currency that they want to shop and be priced in, but you as a merchant receive the currencies that you want to process in, and we'll take out that complexity in the middle. So think about those locals, but currencies in particular, they're not as scary as maybe what they first appear.
Right. Yeah. And I think, Brian, you were saying that, companies are finding new customers in new markets. And that's so true, because I know that through the past couple of years, through social media or other avenues, I have become familiar with a lot more international brands and have gone to their sites, whether it's buying home goods or clothing or things like that, from companies in Europe or in the UK. And I've definitely purchased, but I'm more likely to purchase from a company that easily converts into US dollars versus pounds or the euro, because I don't want to do the conversions in my head. And I've definitely done quite a bit of cart abandonment, because the experience didn't feel right. And I said, my spidey senses went off, and it just wasn't great. So I think localization is definitely a quick win, and something that everybody should really be looking at for their checkout experience. So I want to pivot just a little bit, because I think that this year we've also seen a growing trend in software platforms embedding payments into their platform. And so I was wondering, what does elevating the customer experience look like for them, and how does payment localization fit in there? Brian, can you address that?
Yeah, this is a really interesting space. A lot of growth in it. So when we talk about these sort of software platforms, what we're talking about is those platforms that are going after a specific vertical. So those platforms that are dealing with, the platform for dentists, the platform for school management, the platform for, inflatable balloons. They have these platforms that specialize in everything you need to do in order to manage that. And payments is obviously a key part in terms of managing any of those processes. But what we're seeing is that payments is not key to somebody. Somebody doing inflatable balloons doesn't want to know about that you need to do 3DS in Europe. They just want to sell their balloons and look after the logistics around that. So really, it's finding a partner who can do that for you globally. So we've spent a lot of time developing our products. So we now have our new Dash, Flex, and Relay that allows you to embed. If you have a platform, you can embed our software within it, and it allows you to collect payments for your sub merchants from consumers around the world, and we can provide that sort of local experience like we talked about for merchants earlier for you if you've got an embedded platform. And it's really, really important, because when you are dealing, with your software platform, often you consider just what your local territory is, and you'll consider, your biggest clients who are local to you in your market. But really, for it to be successful, or you can be very, very successful very easily by just, having that same platform be deployed in different regions globally around the world. And again, you don't want to look after the complexity of payments, and we can do that for you. But by doing it, it makes it your platform more acceptable, out to a wider audience, and you're going to have more of your merchants signing up onto your platform to make it available to their consumers. So it's all about embedded payments, making it easy, having somebody who's like ourselves who can do the underwriting on a sub merchant if you want to, or if you want to have full control over checking as regards what merchants go on your platform, you can do that too. But it's having a good partner who can help you to do that and to give that global growth.
Okay, no, that sounds great. So want to move on to our next trend, which is more alternative payment methods will become normalized. So what trends are we seeing with alternative payments and the customer expectations with them? David, let's start with you.
Yep, thanks very much. Well, the pandemic, I think, has changed how consumers and businesses were able to pay. Uh, and with that necessity, that necessity has now become habitual. You know, by the end of 2020, there was, I think, 2.6 billion digital wallet users, and that number is expected to exceed, it's over 4 billion anyway by 2025, you know, which is just a huge leap, obviously. I think merchants now, you know, also know more than ever what APMs are, and their
Mhm.
customers expect to be able to use the ones they want. You know, I know myself, I buy most items on my iPhone personally. If I can't pay using Apple Pay or PayPal and I have to complete, you know, a full checkout form, then
Right.
chances are I won't purchase the item, or at least will think twice about it, or I really want it to go through that kind of hassle. I tend to revisit sites mostly where I know my preferred payment
Mhm.
methods are accepted. You know, I know it's going to be an easy, frictionless checkout experience. In relation to our customers at BlueSnap, I think now more than ever I discuss important APMs and potential new additions on nearly every quarterly business review, where that wouldn't have been the case, you know, before.
Mhm.
It might have been maybe one or two a year. Um, you know, one APM that is definitely coming up more and more frequently is open banking.
Mhm.
Um, Actually, Brian, at this point, from a product perspective, you know, what are your thoughts around open banking? You know, what else you've seen as being a trend?
Open banking is interesting. So open banking is the idea that it's allowing a merchant to get a consumer to push a payment from their account to your merchant account. So it's been very prevalent here in Europe because it was mandated through regulation that all the banks had to open up APIs to be able to do this. But really, we're not really seeing traction in it yet. It has been rolled out, but I think the key problem is it's very clunky. Unlike using a card, there isn't a standardized process that consumers go through that they're comfortable with and that everybody knows the next step because each of the banks has implemented in their own individual way. And the word is that often with that clunkiness, the transaction may not actually complete. And it's a danger you need to consider when you put an alternate payment method on your website. What
Mhm.
impression is it going to give to your customers about your your overall brand? Because
Mhm.
if the actual transaction fails at the end of the day, they're not going to blame their bank who put in a clunky API. They're going to blame you as a merchant because they think it was your fault because you put it up there. So be careful about the APMs that you go for, those alternate payment methods that you go for, that they're suitable and that they work and they're gonna fit with your brand. Um, the other mop I think that I'm hearing an awful lot about is obviously buy now pay later.
Mhm.
It has boomed over the last 18 months. Everybody's talking about buy now pay later. So it's the idea of getting instant credit at a checkout, generally for higher value items. So that big TV, the suite of furniture that you either pay generally over say 4 months, or the other scenario we see is actually for lower value items. A lot of kids now, kids, I'm going to, my own teenage daughters, I'm thinking of, yeah, they'll buy the pair of trousers in
Mhm.
size 6, 8, and 10, get them all delivered, try them all on, and then send back the two that don't fit. Um, with a lot of the buy now pay later methods, because you're not going to pay until the end of the month, you can be technically have a hold for those 3 pairs, but you'll only pay for that one pair that you actually keep, and pay for at the end of the month. So they're becoming very popular. They have their niches. However, I do think that there's possibly a tipping point coming with the buy now pay later. They have been not unregulated, but they have been outside of that regulatory view, and they're getting more and more attention. Indeed, it was announced this morning that Klarna are going to start participating in the UK credit scoring schemes.
Mhm.
So this is where you get a credit score, generally based on, you start off by having a credit card, you get a credit score, and you pay all your bills, and you get a better credit score. You can get a car loan, and one day you can aspire to having a mortgage and buying your own home. Um, Klarna was, and the buy now pay later methods were outside of this, and it was, the regulators weren't particularly happy that, were they giving
Mhm.
credit to people who shouldn't be. So now they're going to come into that fold. I think we're going to see maybe a clampdown perhaps on some of the buy now pay later offerings that it'll be a little bit more restricted. It won't be the enormous growth we've had over the last number of years, but they are there like the other payment methods. They have their uses, so we've split it. We're looking to bring on another payment method later on this year in the buy now, pay later sphere. So it is absolutely an area of growth. But again, for all of the APMs, you need to look at suitability. Don't just throw them all up at the wall and expect them all to stick. Look at the ones that are suitable to your clients.
Right. But I will say, so being in payments, I often feel like it is my duty to test new payment methods. And I do
You mean
have,
go shopping? Yeah.
yes. So I'm going to set my lovely bracelet that I tested. So I do have the Klarna app on my phone, and it is, from a customer experience standpoint, like I got sucked into it, and I said, oh, I'm going to find retailers that I know that I could do split payments. And, again, I tested and bought myself a lovely bracelet from a company that delivers in blue boxes. So, but I can definitely see how, from the consumer standpoint, that could be a tipping point of where I'm going to spend my money, is if I can do the buy now, pay later option. So it's a really interesting trend, and it'll be even more interesting to see how it works with some of these coming regulations. So no, I think it's great.
And April, it goes back to my earlier point: is you have that whole spectrum of payment methods you can put on your website, but don't put them all on. But try putting one or two on and do your A/B testing to see what the success rate is, and you can tune it over time then to see, well, what's the optimum for you.
Yeah. Right. Excellent. Okay, so we could talk about that probably for a whole webinar, but let's dive into our third trend, which is very provocative. And I've been hearing, since I've been in payments for the past several years, I've heard a lot of chatter about this. So I can't wait to get your perspective. Let's talk about businesses and consumers will move towards a cashless society. What will it take for us to become a cashless society, and why do customers want this? David, you want to start off?
Yeah, I can start. Honestly, I think we're already on the way to becoming a cashless society. COVID has definitely helped ensure this. The shift has been accelerated. Before we understood exactly how COVID was spread, I think many businesses stopped accepting cash for safety reasons. The virus on the cash itself. Since then, cashless payments have continued growing in popularity, and lots of businesses are keeping the elements of digital payments, even though customers are returning to in-person commerce. Some examples, you can still probably order from your table via an app in pubs and restaurants. There's still card-only queues because they're quicker. Payment links are still in existence, and probably will never go away, and for sure they won't go away. They're so good. I think people also, they don't want the hassle of cash. I know I rarely carry it anymore. I think there's one instance on a normal week for me that I have to have, and it's to play for five-a-side football, because I've no other option. Other than that, I never spend any cash during the week. It's all card or digital wallet on my phone. And I know some countries like Sweden that they're already almost totally cashless. I think 9% of people use it regularly. So I mean, they're not far away from being able to say, we're gone completely cashless as a society. I think if you look at the payment habits, the contactless payment habits, they've evolved too. You now see all ages making contactless payments, using not only cards, but their phones, their wallets, their watch or Fitbit. Maybe in the past, certain generation would be cash only, but that's not the case anymore. Just stand and watch in a supermarket or a shop, or my own parents use online shopping a lot more than they used to. I think it's put in place a frictionless customer experience. It's just becoming more and more normalized. I think people have realized that cash is no longer necessary in most places. Brian, your thoughts on it?
My thoughts is still have 20 euros in the back of your wallet, or $20, whatever your currency is. I was on a business trip last week.
I should for football, Brian. I should for football.
Yeah, you should, particularly where you play football. But I was away on a business trip last week and said, I'm not going to withdraw any cash in the foreign bank machines and pay the enormous rates. And got all the way back, got all the way there, was there for a week, eating in restaurants, having a lovely time, bought gifts for the wife and the kids, absolutely happy. Came back and I had a transfer in Frankfurt, and I missed my transfer. So I had an overnight in Frankfurt in Germany. Went out for a beer and ordered a beer. A guy came down, the huge big, Steins in Germany, got one of those, and he said it'll be $6.60. And I said, you take cards? He says, no. I couldn't get over it. He had the big purse, the big purse in his apron, big purse out of cash. Jesus. Okay.
Mhm.
And then I remembered I had my emergency €20, so I managed to buy. I was able to afford 3 beers at 6.60. So always have the there, but it's almost gone as regards cashless.
Mhm.
What we would say is in BlueSnap is obviously cards are core to that sort of cashless experience around the world. It is the universal payment method. It's the only one that's really there is cards. But for local countries to have those local payment methods, we talked about them before. Have them available where they're appropriate. I think the other thing that is coming to make us a cash society will be the cryptocurrencies. Now, when you say cryptocurrencies, people run a mile. They're, oh my God, it's a scary place, and what's going to happen there? I think crypto is going to become more mainstream over the next couple of years. So, for example, an interesting use case we're talking to one of our merchants about is that they have businesses that they want to pay in or to get payments from in Latin America that have very volatile exchange rates. And rather than to try and buy a currency and sell a currency that's very, very volatile in Latin America with really poor rates, are saying, well, look, can we use one of the cryptocurrencies in order to move that money in and out? I think that's going to be certainly a first use case. But now we're seeing, I think, in the last year, there's been 100 stable coins have been released, bringing it to about 200 stable coins around the world. And when you consider there's only about 150 physical currencies around the world, but also then there's going to be the central bank-based digital currencies. So as they become more mainstream, they're going to be the real stable currencies that are backed by central banks. That's when we'll see the move to crypto, the move to proper digital currencies and removing cash. Look at countries like Bermuda. Bermuda, you can now pay your annual tax by stablecoin. They now have a cryptocurrency experiment going on with college students. They can shop at 100 stores. So it's becoming real, and it's going to come over the next 2 or 3 years. We're going to see more and more crypto. It's something that we're looking to add to our portfolio over the next short period. So watch this space around crypto.
Yeah. So I agree. I think I agree. Always carry a little bit of something in your wallet. Because I think of two situations that recently happened to me. Is one, I didn't realize how cashless our family had become until my son was doing a charity drive for school where they said, oh, well, just collect the coins you have around the house. And I think pre-pandemic, I probably had a ton because I used a ton more cash, and we'd just put the coins in a jar, they'd be in a purse or something. And I could barely find anything. And so I couldn't even, he was like, Mom, can't you just get a couple of dollars out of your wallet? And I said, I literally have no cash. I cannot remember the last time I had cash on me. And then another instance where I was at getting a coffee. I wasn't getting a beer, but I went to my local coffee shop, always pay with, card or Apple Pay, and their POS system happened to be down. And so they had to put a sign on the door, we can only accept cash today, our computer's down. And it was devastating that I couldn't get my coffee. But I agree. I don't know if we'll be totally cashless, but I think like 98% there. You always got to carry a couple of bills with you just in case. So very interesting. All right, now let's get to our final trend. And this is around B2B payments. So our final trend, digitalizing B2B payments will continue to progress. So David, how have expectations around B2B payments changed, and how does that contribute to the customer experience?
I think it's pretty simple in that people want the same conveniences in B2B payments as they have in their own day-to-day payments. Payments being fast, inexpensive, they're now now very, very important to people. Payment links on invoices and AR automation, they're replacing manual processes more and more. They reduce human error, they allow customers to pay more quickly, gives them extra choice, and really importantly, it leads to better cash flow, which is the lifeblood of a lot of businesses. So that's hugely important. I think on top of that, then, if you can also provide a customer portal and better self-service options, this increases customer satisfaction and your business gets paid on time. So it's a win-win. Brian, your thoughts from a product point?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, David. A lot of it is down to expectations of, if I can pay my electricity bill via all these methods, why do, my company invoice when I come in, why do I still have to write a check? Remember them? But people are still writing checks and put them in, and they're getting lost, and somebody needs to bring them down to the bank. Um, you know, why can't you make all the consumer payment methods available to your B2B customers? Um, Other businesses aren't afraid of paying by card. People seem to have a reluctance towards it, but other businesses have cards and they're happily will pay with their corporate card for expenses that they have to your business or invoices to your business. Obviously, the local payment methods are there. One that we see is quite successful. We've a local bank transfer product again, so cross-border they can send to a local bank account in their own country, and then we can remit that back to you as a merchant. But having that single interface for all of this, the QR code that goes to a single portal that presents all your methods of payment. Yeah, B2B should be the same as B2C, should be just as easy and getting easier.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that there are habits from consumer purchasing that people expect when they're doing B2B transactions, and it's just muscle memory. It's habit. You're exactly right, Brian. If I pay all these ways when I'm making a consumer purchase, why don't I have the same options for B2B? So I think it's a really, really interesting trend. So thank you so much. These were all really great insights. And I think this is an incredible look into how businesses can elevate the customer experience with payments in 2022. And so now that we have done a deep dive into each of them, I would love to hear from our attendees about which payment trends are they're most interested in using to elevate the customer experience in 2022. So our poll is up. It's just popped up on the screen. And again, yeah, we'd love to hear from you about what trends you're interested in using over the coming year. And so while people are taking the poll and voting, definitely, again, if you have questions, definitely put them in the question box to the right hand of the screen. And also, just so you know, this is the second webinar in our series of webinars about the trends in payments for 2022. Our next webinar will be hosting, we'll be talking about how businesses can optimize payments for the best ROI or return on investment. So details about that will be coming soon. So let's see if we have any. All right. So, wow, overwhelmingly, people are really interested in using B2B, digitalizing their B2B payments to capitalizing on that trend. And I think that is a huge thing that we've talked about is, really the pandemic was a catalyst for companies who had these very manual processes and really needed to digitalize that experience to make it easier for their customers and their employees. So that's really interesting to see. So we'll see what happens there. Great. So we did get a couple of questions in before we end. So let me go to the first question, which is, you talked a lot about localizing the customer experience in the beginning. Do you have any other tips for getting the most out of selling globally? Who wants to jump on that one?
I could jump on that one probably from my point of view. I think something you can do is probably partner with someone that can tick all the boxes globally for you. If you want to transact in certain parts of the world, and BlueSnap are definitely a payment partner that can do that. But it reduces technical debt. It saves you dealing with lots of different people and trying to organize local governance and rules. So definitely the big one for me is partner with the right person.
Yeah, but again, it's the local currency, local language, local payment methods. They're the key things. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So I have another one. Oh, now I feel like the questions are coming in fast and furious. Okay. The next one is, what type of alternative payments are playing in B2B? What do I need to offer? Are we seeing any alternative payments in B2B yet?
What I would say is that there's none specific to B2B. Obviously, things like ACH, some of what would be traditionally the slower rails can be there. So things like ACH, but powered by a QR code in order to bring you to somewhere that they can make the payment from the invoice. Other ones, I would sort of say that people again are a bit scared of card, and there's no reason to be scared of card for a B2B transaction. And to accept a B2B payment via card is very acceptable and very efficient.
What about
David,
crypto in the future for B2B, Brian? You think it's feasible
yeah,
as things
yeah.
become more regulated? Yeah.
Like I heard, like we discussed earlier about that merchant in Latin America, or that have customers in Latin America, I think there'll be those niche uses for crypto in the short to medium term. Yeah.
Great. Okay, this actually dovetails really nicely into the next question that came in, which is, what are some of the top alternative payment methods in the US and in Europe?
I'll let you take this one as product, Brian. I won't jump on it.
I should know the ones in the US, shouldn't I? I'll tell you about Europe first anyway. Europe is certainly it's SEPA direct debit, ideal for the Netherlands, so forth for Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Trustly for the Nordics, P24 for Poland. They're the major ones that I'd list out in terms of Europe. Sort of globally, there's always PayPal. PayPal would be big in the US. ACH similar to European direct debit, so SEPA direct debit, ACH in the US. Then there's always the wallets. So, if you regard them as being alternative or not, or additional payment methods. So, your Google Pay, Apple Pay, what else is there? And then of course the Chinese, the Alipay and WeChat Pay, are also very appropriate as well. So I think all of those, they're the big hitters. I think. Have I missed any, David, that you've come across?
No, I think you did a good job.
Yep.
And there's always more, I'm sure, that will be coming in the future. So, well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. It was really a pleasure to talk to both of you. This was, I think, a great conversation, very insightful. I can honestly say, one of my favorite webinars that I posted in a long time. So we're definitely going to have you back. Be prepared.
Thanks, April. Been great.
You're welcome. So, and thank you to our audience for joining us today. If you have any other questions, definitely reach out to the team at BlueSnap. You can check out our resource center on bluesnap.com there for the latest and greatest information on all things payments. And we hope to see you at a future webinar. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.